If you ask corporate executives about Gen Z, they will all tell you the exact same thing. They are lazy, entitled, and easily stressed out by normal expectations. They do not want to work hard. They post endless videos on social media, complaining about being in a career-confused era. In fact, 6 out of 10 bosses admit to firing Gen Z employees shortly after hiring them. They claim these young workers lack basic skills, focus, and professional boundaries. It is very easy to look at those headlines and blame the younger generation. It fits the comfortable story that older people have repeated for generations. There is only one tiny problem with that narrative. It simply is not true. If young people are so lazy, why are 17-year-olds juggling 4 jobs at once? Why are college graduates with top degrees applying for thousands of jobs and getting total silence? Why are millions of young workers taking shifts in retail just to survive? The truth is far more concerning than lazy teenagers. Gen Z is not refusing to climb the corporate career ladder. The corporate ladder was chopped down, sold for scrap, and replaced with a fake job listing. So it is time to learn how money works to see why Gen Z is trapped in a jobs crisis. Let us look at what happens when a young person tries to get a job today. They spent 4 years in college. They took on tens of thousands of dollars in student debt. They were told that a degree was the golden ticket to a stable middle-class life. Then they open up job boards and start searching for an entry-level position. That is where the comedy begins. According to recent data, 35% of entry-level jobs now require 3 or more years of experience. In fields like software and tech, that number jumps to over 60%. Read that again slowly. An entry-level job requires 3 to 5 years of prior work experience. How do you get experience if you need experience just to get the starting job? It is a classic catch-22 that makes zero economic sense. Companies want 22-year-olds who somehow have the workplace wisdom of a 30-year-old veteran. They want workers who require zero training, zero supervision, and zero investment. If you do not fit that impossible box, your application gets thrown into a digital trash bin. Most job applications today never even touch the hands of a real human being. They are processed by automated tracking software that scans for specific keywords. If your resume lacks 3 years of experience, the computer instantly rejects you. You get a cold, automated email thanking you for your time, or you get complete silence. One college graduate named Michela described the job market as a complete desert. She applied to dozens of positions over 6 months while working customer service. She said, "You are standing out there in the heat, but nobody is hydrating you." That feeling of dry isolation is everywhere among young job seekers. They spend hours tailoring custom cover letters and polishing their resumes. They hit submit, and their work vanishes into a dark void. It turns out that many of those jobs were never real in the first place. Welcome to the bizarre world of ghost jobs. A ghost job is a listing posted by a company that has no actual intention of hiring anyone right now. A recent survey of HR professionals revealed a shocking reality. 45% of employers confess that they regularly post fake job listings. Nearly 7 out of 10 admit to shutting down job searches without notifying applicants. Why on earth would a company spend money and time to post jobs that do not exist? The reasons are as cynical as you might expect. First, it makes the company look like it is growing to outside investors and rivals. If a firm has 50 open listings, Wall Street assumes business is booming. Second, it gives existing overworked employees the false illusion that help is on the way. Management can point to the open listing and tell their staff to hang in there. Third, it allows HR departments to collect massive databases of potential candidates for free. Millions of Gen Z applicants are spending countless hours shouting into an empty echo chamber. They think they are competing against other humans. In reality, they are padding corporate metrics and feeding automated databases. Consider the story of Ashley Terrell. She graduated from the University of Hawaii with a degree in business administration. She had real experience on her resume, including a student marketing role for Red Bull. She did everything right. Yet after months of constant applying, her only job offer was working in the power tools department at Home Depot. She took the retail job to pay her bills. Every single day during her bathroom breaks at Home Depot, she sat on her phone applying for marketing roles. Imagine carrying a business degree while applying for office jobs from a retail restroom stall. That is not a story of a lazy worker lacking ambition. That is the story of a system that has fundamentally broken down. Or look at Ruby Skinner, a 21-year-old university student in London. She is currently working 3 different part-time jobs just to cover basic living costs. She works shifts at a local pub, walks dogs, and tutors high school students. Her partner graduated from Cambridge University with an engineering degree. Cambridge is one of the most prestigious academic institutions on the planet. He has been applying for engineering jobs for a full year with constant rejections. If an engineering graduate from Cambridge cannot land an entry-level job, the problem is not personal laziness. The problem is structural. To understand why this feels so painful, we have to look at the economic math. Older generations often love to talk about how they worked hard in their 20s. They talk about working as mailmen, teachers, or factory workers to buy a home. Back in the day, a single modest salary could support a family. It could pay off a home mortgage and put a kid through college. The economic math of that era left enough room to build real financial security. Today, that math has completely collapsed. Student loan debt in America has ballooned to over $1.7 trillion. Housing costs have skyrocketed far faster than entry-level wages. In major cities where the jobs are located, rent takes up most of a young worker's paycheck. 2 full-time incomes today barely cover what one income covered a generation ago. When a young person takes a job that pays $50,000, they are not building wealth. They are barely covering rent, groceries, interest on student debt, and basic transit. The buffer that allowed previous generations to accept hard work as a path upward is gone. When the reward for hard work is reduced to basic survival, motivation naturally declines. Katie Warnock runs a major staffing firm that places hourly workers. She notices this exact shift in workplace attitudes every day. Recently, a substitute teacher assigned to proctor an early morning exam arrived 2 hours late. When asked why, the teacher asked if coming late was better than not coming at all. It is easy to shake your head at that lack of professional responsibility. Warnock sees it as a clear symptom of a much deeper economic disease. Work ethic has never existed in a vacuum. Work ethic is driven by economic incentives. For decades, workers accepted early morning commutes and demanding jobs because it led to ownership. It meant buying a home, getting a reliable car, and securing a comfortable retirement. Today, those outcomes feel completely out of reach for the average hourly worker. When showing up on time no longer leads to upward mobility, accountability begins to erode. Telling people to just work harder without fixing the underlying reward structure does not work. Many people assume this jobs crisis was created overnight by recent economic shifts. They think it is just a temporary hangover from the pandemic or recent corporate layoffs. Economists who study long-term data paint a much darker picture. A landmark study from the National Bureau of Economic Research analyzed federal data from 1982 to 2023. The researchers wanted to discover why wage growth for American workers has been weak for 40 years. Their findings expose a massive structural shift. Employed workers today are half as likely to receive a better-paying outside job offer compared to the 1980s. In the past, the main way people raised their pay was by switching companies. You worked hard at firm A, got a better offer from firm B, and climbed the salary ladder. Today, workers are increasingly stuck in low-paying roles with nowhere to go. The job ladder has been steadily breaking down for 4 decades. Gen Z did not cause this collapse. They simply inherited an economic building that was already missing its bottom rungs. So why did the career ladder fall apart over the last 40 years? The study points to 2 major corporate forces. The first force is massive corporate consolidation. 40 years ago, industries were made up of hundreds of independent regional companies. If you worked in media, tech, retail, or healthcare, you had dozens of local employers competing for your skills. Over the decades, big corporations swallowed up their smaller competitors through constant mergers. Today, a handful of giant conglomerates control entire sectors of the economy. When fewer companies exist in a market, employers do not need to compete aggressively for talent. They hold all the pricing power over labor. If you do not like your pay at Giant Company A, your only other option is Giant Company B. And Giant Company B uses the exact same salary scales and hiring policies. The second force that broke the job ladder is the rise of aggressive legal restrictions. For years, companies forced millions of average employees to sign non-compete agreements. These clauses legally prevented workers from taking a job with a competitor in the same geographic area. In theory, non-competes were meant to protect top executives holding valuable corporate secrets. In reality, corporations weaponized them against everyday hourly workers. Over half of employers using non-competes forced all their hourly and part-time staff to sign them. Fast food workers, hairstylists, and customer service reps were locked out of moving to better-paying jobs. Studies show that these restrictions artificially depressed wages across the entire country. When states banned non-competes for low-wage workers, hourly pay immediately jumped by 2 to 3%. Job mobility increased, and more workers transitioned into stable salaried roles. By restricting worker movement and consolidating power, corporations effectively froze wage growth. Gen Z walked right into this consolidated, low-mobility trap. To make matters worse, the modern macroeconomic environment is freezing hiring completely. The Federal Reserve has described the current economy as a low hiring and low firing market. Big corporations are not necessarily laying off massive portions of their existing staff. Instead, they are simply holding on to the workers they already have and refusing to bring on new ones. Workers call this trend job hugging. Fearful of economic uncertainty, 3/4 of current employees plan to stay put in their current roles. When nobody leaves their job, no new openings are created for people entering the workforce. The entire hiring pipeline gets backed up into a massive corporate logjam. Existing employees hug their chairs tight, and young graduates are left standing outside in the cold. Junior-level job postings have plummeted by 35% in recent years. It is a stagnant market, where the front door to corporate America is locked tight. Then comes the newest and biggest disruption of all. Artificial intelligence has entered the corporate workspace like a freight train. For decades, entry-level jobs were built on routine cognitive tasks. Junior employees were hired to draft basic emails, summarize documents, reformat data, and organize spreadsheets. These tasks were not exciting or glamorous. However, they served an essential purpose in the corporate ecosystem. They were the informal apprenticeship that allowed young workers to learn how a business actually operates. Handling basic paperwork helped new hires build context, confidence, and internal networks. Now, generative AI tools can complete those exact same tasks in 5 seconds for a fraction of a cent. Venture capitalists and tech executives openly brag about this shift. One venture capital partner admitted that his firm used to employ a large team of junior associates. Today, he has 0 associates. Senior partners simply use AI tools to do the research that early career workers used to handle. A survey of corporate executives revealed that 63% plan to replace entry-level tasks with AI. When companies automate the bottom rungs, they save short-term money on payroll. They also destroy the training ground for the next generation of company leaders. This creates another brutal paradox for Gen Z job seekers. Managers expect new hires to arrive on day one with advanced soft skills. They want young workers who can manage projects, negotiate conflict, and lead meetings right away. Yet those are the exact human skills that used to be taught on the job. To make matters more complicated, Gen Z came of age during global pandemic lockdowns. They spent crucial high school and college years learning behind computer screens. They missed out on normal face-to-face social interaction and early workplace experiences. Now they enter a workforce that offers 0 formal training or grace periods. Over 1/4 of corporate executives say they hesitate to hire recent college grads. 3/4 of managers say Gen Z workers require far more time and effort to train. 1 in 5 managers even admitted to considering quitting because of the stress of managing young staff. Employers want fully formed, hyper-skilled professionals straight out of school. Yet they refuse to invest the time or money required to actually train them. It is like expecting someone to run a marathon without ever letting them practice walking. Faced with this wall of corporate rejection, Gen Z is reacting in a fascinating way. They are not sitting at home giving up on life. Instead, they are completely redefining what work looks like. When traditional companies refuse to give them a ladder, young workers build their own. Welcome to the era of Generation Entrepreneur. Take the story of Suhit Agarwal, a math graduate from the University of Southern California. He applied to big tech firms like Google 6 different times and never received an interview. Rather than waiting around for corporate permission, he started building software startups himself. He used advanced AI tools to handle coding tasks that used to require entire teams of engineers. He jumped straight from jobless graduate to founding engineer. Or look at Celeste Amadon, who turned down a prestigious investment banking internship at JP Morgan. She decided to launch her own tech startup instead. Her parents were so terrified that her mother staged 3 separate interventions to stop her. Celeste ignored the fear, raised millions in venture funding, and became a CEO at 22. Young people are realizing that betting on a corporate employer is no longer a safe option. Corporate jobs used to offer a guarantee of long-term stability. Today, corporate jobs offer sudden layoffs and flat wages. Ownership is becoming the new definition of financial safety. For those who do not start tech companies, safety means having multiple streams of income. Data shows that polyemployment has reached its highest level in over a decade. Over 55% of people working multiple simultaneous jobs are General Z. Take 17-year-old Angelina Taylor Murphy. While attending college 3 days a week, she works 4 separate part-time jobs. She works at a chip shop, referees youth sports, manages social media, and runs youth clubs. She earns hundreds of pounds a month and saves most of it for her future. 2/3 of Gen Z workers say they want multiple streams of income to feel secure. Nearly half believe that traditional single-employer jobs will soon become completely obsolete. Loyalty to a single company is viewed as a dangerous risk rather than a smart career move. Young workers watched their parents put in long hours only to get laid off during corporate crises. They learned that holding one job leaves you completely vulnerable to corporate whims. Diversifying your work across multiple gigs gives you control over your own survival. The sheer scale of this shift is staggering. A massive new study from the workforce management firm Deputy analyzed over 41 million shifts and hundreds of millions of working hours. They discovered that polyemployment has officially hit its highest point in over a decade. Polyemployment is just a fancy corporate term for working multiple jobs at the exact same time. Gen Z makes up more than half of all workers engaged in this exhausting balancing act. Now, older generations might look at this and assume these kids are just desperately trying to pay off their massive student loans. Economic survival is certainly a huge piece of the puzzle. But the data reveals something much more intentional going on beneath the surface. This is not just a desperate scramble for cash. It is a deliberate cultural rejection of the traditional 9-to-5 corporate grind. You see, for the last few years, the internet was obsessed with the idea of overemployment. Overemployment meant secretly working 2 full-time remote office jobs at the same time to double your salary. It kept you tied to 2 different desks and 2 different bosses. Gen Z is completely rejecting that model. They do not want 2 sets of corporate handcuffs. They are intentionally seeking out multiple part-time roles and freelance gigs to gain total flexibility. Sylvia Martinchevich is the CEO of Deputy. She explained that this generation watched their parents pledge blind loyalty to a single employer. Those same loyal parents were then brutally laid off during the 2008 financial crisis. Gen Z learned a very harsh lesson from watching that trauma unfold. Relying on one employer for your entire livelihood is incredibly dangerous. Hedging your risks across 3 different income streams is actually a much safer bet. The old corporate promise was always about stability. You give us 40 hours a week, and we give you a secure life. Today, that promise is completely broken. The new promise that young workers are chasing is absolute ownership. Take Francesca Albo, a 29-year-old who left a secure job at a biotech company. She walked away to start a company that offers puppy yoga and dog therapy. She realized that climbing her own ladder was ultimately safer than trusting a corporate ladder that could be pulled away at any second. When there is no guaranteed outcome with any job, working for yourself at least gives you control over your own fate. This massive shift in mindset is playing out live on social media every single day. Welcome to what the internet is calling the career-confused era. A woman named Jessie Jean recently started a TikTok account simply to document how lost she felt. She had spent 7 years building a highly successful business as a health coach. She was respected, she made good money, and she was known in her industry. Then, she just hit a wall and realized she had absolutely nothing left to give. The work completely drained her. Instead of quietly polishing her resume, she decided to start completely over in public. She bought some cheap thrift store furniture, set up a camera in her garage, and started sanding down wood. She launched her social media accounts under the banner of being in her career-confused era. Within 5 months, she amassed nearly 400,000 followers across platforms. Her first furniture flip netted her $800. She openly admitted that making a few $100 sanding a dresser felt far more fulfilling than making thousands of dollars in her old corporate role. This is not a statement about a lazy worker refusing to earn a living. It is a profound statement about what modern work is actually costing us emotionally. The career-confused era has become a cultural shorthand for a very specific type of modern anxiety. It is the overwhelming sensation of doing everything perfectly right, following all the rules, and still ending up in a place that feels completely wrong. You see this sentiment flooding group chats, comment sections, and even formal LinkedIn posts. Corporate executives love to frame this as a generational failure of ambition. They claim Gen Z just lacks the grit that their parents supposedly possessed. But reading this as a motivation problem is fundamentally incorrect. What looks like confusion to an older boss is actually a highly rational response to a broken system. Herminia Ibarra is a professor of organizational behavior at the London Business School. She has spent decades studying how people transition between careers. Her research proves that the old advice about career planning is completely backwards. Most people believe you have to sit down, figure out exactly what you want to do, and then go do it. Ibarra found that clarity actually comes from taking action first. You do not figure out what you want by staring at a blank wall or taking personality quizzes. You figure it out by trying new activities, testing new networks, and seeing what sticks. Jessie Jean sanding a dresser in her garage was not her being lost. It was her running a real-time economic experiment. Bonnie Dilber is a recruiting leader who frequently speaks out about modern workplace dynamics. She strongly agrees that this identity crisis is deeply rooted in basic economic math. The brutal reality is that the types of jobs offering a truly comfortable lifestyle are shrinking rapidly. We place an incredible amount of pressure on our careers today. We expect a single job to provide massive meaning, deep identity, total financial security, and flexible work hours. We ask modern work to carry a burden that no normal job was ever designed to hold. In the past, you could work a boring job because the paycheck allowed you to buy a house and find meaning in your community. Today, that same boring job barely covers your rent. When a job stops delivering financial security, the existential dread hits incredibly hard because there is no backup plan. This brings us to a massive structural misalignment that nobody wants to talk about out loud. For the last 20 years, society pushed millions of teenagers toward expensive four-year college degrees. We told them it was the only safe path to success. So they took on massive amounts of high-interest debt to fund those degrees. Naturally, they now need jobs that pay enough to actually service that massive debt while covering record-high living costs. The problem is that the total number of high-paying jobs has remained relatively stagnant. Young workers are stuck with the bill for an expensive ticket, but the theater is completely sold out. It is incredibly hypocritical when corporate leaders call this generation entitled. Bonnie Dilber points out that older executives said the exact same things about millennials 20 years ago. Millennials were called lazy while they worked 60-hour weeks for $35,000 a year. What executives call a lack of loyalty today is actually just Gen Z reading the room. Young workers have completely internalized the brutal lesson that institutional loyalty is a one-way street. Companies will demand your absolute devotion on Friday and lay you off via a mass email on Monday morning. Therefore, needing a side hustle is not a sign of poor work ethic. It is a sign that betting your entire financial future on a single corporate employer is incredibly naive. Faced with this reality, Gen Z is making a shocking pivot that is terrifying traditional universities. They are abandoning white-collar office dreams and flocking toward blue-collar trades. A national survey found that 3 out of 5 Gen Z workers plan to embrace blue-collar work. More shockingly, half of the people planning this pivot already hold a college degree. Nearly half of the surveyed workers believe that physical trades offer much better long-term security than sitting in a cubicle. They are pursuing careers in construction, electrical work, plumbing, and automotive repair. This blue-collar pivot is a direct reaction to the massive wave of corporate layoffs. In just 1 month recently, corporate giants like Amazon and UPS announced over 60,000 job cuts. The underemployment rate has skyrocketed to nearly 42%, its highest level since 2020. Gen Z looks at this data and realizes that an artificial intelligence bot can easily write a marketing email or analyze a spreadsheet. However, a computer program cannot physically fix a broken pipe, wire a new house, or repair a transmission. Physical labor has suddenly become the ultimate defense against digital automation. Unfortunately, this pivot to the trades still runs into the exact same entry-level roadblocks. Blue-collar jobs also demand years of prior experience. You cannot just walk onto a major construction site on Tuesday and demand a high-paying electrical apprenticeship. The gatekeeping exists in every single sector of the economy. This brings us to a deeply frustrating truth about the global labor market. The narrative that AI is simply eliminating jobs is a little too simple. Some economists argue that the real issue is a massive, structural hiring freeze driven by corporate greed and economic paranoia. Take a look at the youth unemployment numbers around the world. The crisis is not just happening in America. In the United States, the unemployment rate for young workers recently hit 10.8%, which is more than double the national average. But if you look globally, the picture gets even darker. In India, youth unemployment sits around 17%. In China, it hovers near 16.5%. In Morocco, an unbelievable 36% of young people cannot find work. In the United Kingdom, over 1 million graduates recently fought over just 17,000 entry-level positions. This is a coordinated, global collapse of the entry-level job market. Across Europe, the problem is not always total joblessness. The problem is deep job precarity. In Spain, overall youth unemployment has dropped, but the jobs replacing the old ones are terrible. Contracts are much shorter, wages are completely stagnant, and benefits are non-existent. Young workers across France and Germany are trapped in a cycle of quick in and quick out employment. They bounce rapidly between temporary hospitality roles, retail shifts, and short-term tech gigs. They never stay long enough to build real tenure, secure promotions, or gain meaningful leverage. It is a massive treadmill that requires you to run at full speed just to stay exactly in the same place. The World Economic Forum recently released a report projecting the future of global jobs. They found that 41% of global organizations plan to reduce their workforce by the end of the decade. The primary reason cited is the rapid adoption of automation and artificial intelligence. Yet at the exact same time, 70% of those companies claim they desperately want to hire people with new skills. They cite a massive skills gap as their main barrier to growth. This exposes the ultimate hypocrisy of the modern corporate world. They refuse to train young workers because it costs money. Then they turn around and complain endlessly to the media that they cannot find anybody with the right skills. Despite all the doom and gloom, Gen Z is actually adapting to this hostile environment faster than anyone expected. While older executives panic about the future, young workers are quietly using AI to their massive advantage. Research shows that over half of Gen Z workers regularly use artificial intelligence to solve complex problems at work. The Deputy Workforce Study found a massive divide between young workers who embrace AI and those who fight it. They call the successful group the poly-advantaged workers. These are young people holding a full-time job while juggling side gigs using AI tools to handle the heavy lifting. Almost 3/4 of shift workers said using AI tools helps them finish their tasks and leave work on time. AI gives them the ultimate superpower of hyper-efficiency. However, this technology cuts both ways in a brutal fashion. The CEO of Anthropic recently warned that artificial intelligence could easily wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar roles in the near future. For young workers deliberately juggling multiple part-time gigs without a secure full-time anchor, AI feels like a looming executioner. It threatens to automate the precarious, low-level tasks they rely on to pay their rent. In fact, some studies show that nearly 44% of Gen Z workers are actively trying to sabotage their own company's AI rollout. They view the technology not as a tool for efficiency, but as a direct threat to their basic survival. This entire situation leaves HR departments and business leaders standing at a dangerous crossroads. The jobs that used to serve as gentle on-ramps into the professional world are vanishing overnight. When companies destroy these entry-level roles to save a few bucks in the short term, they are quietly burning down their own future. If nobody is allowed onto the first rung of the ladder today, there will be no mid-level managers available tomorrow. Replacing a 22-year-old with a chatbot might make this quarter's financial spreadsheet look slightly better, but it guarantees a catastrophic leadership void 5 years from now. You cannot magically spawn experienced senior leaders out of thin air. Corporate leaders love to complain about a massive shortage of vital soft skills. They say young workers do not know how to communicate or resolve basic conflicts. They claim Gen Z lacks human skills like critical thinking and professional adaptability. But where exactly are young people supposed to learn these complex workplace behaviors? In the past, these vital soft skills were taught passively on the actual job. An entry-level worker would sit in an office and closely observe senior managers. They would listen to phone calls, attend meetings, and slowly absorb the corporate culture. Today, remote work and distributed teams have completely shattered that traditional workplace learning model. Managers working from home do not have the extra time to train new hires. They desperately want junior employees who can operate completely independently from day one. They expect new workers to communicate perfectly and make excellent decisions without any oversight. This forces entry-level roles much closer to the daily reality of mid-level management. Employers essentially want Gen Z to arrive with skills they never had a chance to learn. Think of old entry-level jobs like informal apprenticeships designed for the corporate world. When you completely remove the physical apprenticeship, you also remove the vital training moments. This missing gap is exactly why executives are so terrified of hiring recent college graduates. It is why 1 in 5 managers literally consider quitting due to overwhelming workplace stress. They are deeply frustrated by managing young workers who never received basic office training. To make matters worse, young workers are currently stuck in an artificial intelligence trap. As digital natives, Gen Z is highly comfortable using basic AI software tools. They have grown up with smart algorithms and completely expect them in the workplace. However, casual comfort with consumer technology is not the same thing as professional competence. The modern workplace requires workers who actually know when to question an AI output. Employees must use AI to support problem solving, not to replace critical human thinking. When young workers skip foundational tasks, they fail to develop sound professional judgment. This creates a massive crisis for the future sustainability of our entire global economy. If companies refuse to invest in training today, nobody will be ready to lead tomorrow. So how is a young person supposed to survive in this highly broken system? If you ask a traditional career counselor, they will likely give you terrible advice. They will tell you to polish your resume and apply endlessly to online job portals. They suggest using automated tools like LinkedIn Easy Apply to spam hundreds of companies. This strategy is a guaranteed ticket to massive rejection and deep psychological burnout. Recruiters are completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of low-quality online applications today. They use ruthless tracking software to instantly ignore almost every single digital submission. When job seekers face endless automated rejection, they begin to feel totally hopeless. It creates the false illusion that there are absolutely no jobs out there anywhere. Dan Kiernan is a highly respected careers coach working at the University of Oxford. He argues that the traditional way we teach young people to job hunt is broken. Instead of firing off digital resumes, young workers must return to the physical world. They need to bypass the algorithms and make actual human connections with potential employers. Imagine a young graduate wanting to break into the highly competitive real estate sector. Instead of applying online, they should make a list of local real estate agencies. They need to dress smartly, print copies of their resume, and visit each office in person. They can introduce themselves directly and explain their genuine passion for the specific industry. They should ask the local manager for a brief conversation to demonstrate their unique value. Doing this takes incredible effort and guarantees a few highly awkward face-to-face rejections. However, pounding the pavement sends a powerful economic signal to a potential local employer. It proves that you have the drive and social skills that computers simply cannot fake. In a highly dysfunctional digital market, real human connection puts you back in charge. When facing this massive corporate wall, young workers must also target smaller regional companies. Sometimes it is much better for your career to be a big fish in a small pond. Working for a smaller business offers the incredible chance to learn completely new practical skills. Young workers get to work closely with executive teams and build a strong professional network. Small companies often provide a collaborative environment where employees can rapidly diversify their skill sets. Another crucial survival tactic is learning exactly how to avoid severe mental and emotional burnout. Job hunting in a modern market filled with fake ghost jobs is incredibly exhausting work. Endless automated rejection takes a massive psychological toll on a young person's overall mindset. Job seekers must learn to step away from their glowing screens and take necessary breaks. Investing in your mental health is vital, because extreme burnout will never create real opportunities. Finally, young people must start treating their personal networking exactly like a full-time job. Every single social interaction you have is a potential ticket to the job of your dreams. Whether you are attending a medical appointment or a family party, you absolutely must network. Job seekers should constantly reach out to LinkedIn connections and follow relevant industry employees. They need to show up in physical spaces and boldly showcase their unique human personality. Creating a digital newsletter or starting a local mentorship group can attract massive positive attention. The modern entry-level crisis is undeniably difficult, but it is not completely impossible to beat. Job seekers are still landing great positions by simply refusing to fit inside traditional corporate boxes. Sadly, even when young people do land a part-time job, the financial math remains brutal. Consider the millions of university students trying desperately to balance their rigorous studies with survival. A massive survey of over 1,000 students recently revealed a truly terrifying financial reality. Government maintenance loans leave an average university student with a severe monthly budget shortfall. Students are left scrambling to find over 500 extra pounds every single month. Just a few short years ago, that exact same monthly shortfall was only 200 pounds. Financial support systems have completely failed to keep pace with the brutal, real cost of living. Part-time work is no longer just for extra spending money on the weekends. Taking on low-wage retail shifts is now an absolute necessity for basic human survival. Students are forced to balance heavy coursework with evening shifts and highly unpredictable zero-hour contracts. This constant financial stress severely impacts their mental well-being and overall academic performance. They are drowning in debt before they even step foot onto the broken corporate career ladder. This is exactly why human resources departments desperately need to change their outdated hiring strategies. Organizations must immediately stop treating early career training as a totally unnecessary corporate expense. They need to completely rebuild the missing entry ramps into the professional corporate world. This means creating paid internships that actually lay the groundwork for long-term employee development. It requires designing entry-level roles that possess realistic daily expectations for fresh college graduates. Companies must eagerly hire candidates based on their future potential, rather than expecting absolute perfection. Modern applicant tracking software is currently over-optimized for corporate efficiency and strict keyword matching. It ruthlessly filters out young people who could easily grow into a role with basic training. Early career hiring should focus purely on a candidate's natural curiosity and willingness to learn. Once officially hired, these young workers must be paired closely with experienced senior corporate mentors. Mentorship helps translate the unspoken workplace rules that usually cause severe friction and rapid turnover. Divesting from the rising generation of young workers is a massive strategic mistake for companies. By the end of this decade, millennials and Gen Z will completely dominate the global workforce. 86% of Gen Z workers consider purpose-driven work to be absolutely essential. They bring incredible digital fluency, deep human empathy, and a strong desire for meaningful projects. If a modern company wants to survive, it must clearly articulate a mission and cultural values. Instead of tracking raw output, corporate managers need to aggressively track hard and soft skill development. Investing deeply in young talent pays massive dividends in overall employee retention and deep institutional knowledge. The companies that prioritize extensive training today will build the most resilient global workforces of tomorrow. The career-confused era is not a terrifying crisis for smart corporate businesses to fear. It is a massive cultural signal pointing directly toward a highly necessary global economic transformation. The entry-level crisis is not just a young person problem. It is a terrifying preview of the entire future economy. Anish Raman serves as the Chief Economic Opportunity Officer for LinkedIn. He recently issued a very loud warning to the corporate world. He argued that fixing the entry-level crisis is the first step to fixing all work. The massive changes hitting Gen Z today are coming for everyone else tomorrow. All of our jobs will eventually crash into this exact same wave of economic change. This is not just a harmless trend affecting a few unlucky recent graduates. The implications for corporate talent pipelines and the global economy as a whole are incredibly dire. Top technology leaders are practically screaming about this upcoming economic reality. Geoffrey Hinton is widely known as the godfather of artificial intelligence. He recently went on national television to issue a stark warning. He stated that artificial intelligence is already extremely good at completing complex tasks. He predicts we will soon see technology replace many existing human jobs. Elon Musk took this terrifying prediction one massive step further. The billionaire chief executive repeatedly claimed that artificial intelligence and robotics will change everything. He believes these tools will soon eliminate the need for people to work at all. When the richest people on Earth tell you jobs are disappearing, you should probably listen. Corporate executives are definitely listening to these massive technological warnings. A recent gathering at the Yale School of Management revealed a deeply grim corporate mood. 66% of the surveyed executives plan to cut jobs or freeze hiring this year. Only a tiny one-third of those business leaders actually expect to hire anyone at all. Businesses are actively choosing to do more with less. They are shrinking their teams and pushing harder on the employees they already have. This corporate caution creates a massive economic bottleneck for everyone else. Because of this intense corporate fear, older workers are refusing to leave their jobs. We are witnessing a massive rise in a trend known as job hugging. 75% of current workers plan to stay in their roles through 2027. Nearly half of them admit they are staying purely out of deep economic fear. They are terrified of the uncertain economy and refuse to risk finding a new job. When older workers hug their jobs, nobody moves up the corporate ladder. This means no new openings are created at the bottom of the ladder for younger workers. It is a massive traffic jam holding back the entire global workforce. This severe economic dysfunction is happening everywhere you look around the globe. Take a look at the current labor market situation in Australia. Only 11.7% of job seekers found long-term work last year. They relied on private employment services, but those services completely failed to connect them. Shifting skill requirements and a slowing global economy make it impossible to match workers with roles. Across the entire continent of Africa, the situation is reaching a massive boiling point. 70% of the African continent is currently under the age of 30. Youth-led protests have already swept across Kenya, Madagascar, and Morocco. The African Development Bank warns that the continent needs a completely new economic growth model. They must deliver quality jobs at massive scale just to prevent widespread civil unrest. The World Economic Forum recently studied exactly how much our global jobs will change. Their massive jobs report projects that 22% of current roles will undergo structural changes. This massive shift will happen before the end of the current decade. However, the exact same report predicts the creation of 78 million brand new roles. The jobs of the future will definitely exist for those willing to adapt. They just will not look like the traditional office roles your high school counselor recommended. The corporate 9-to-5 job is slowly fading away into history. This reality is exactly why Gen Z is completely changing their approach to earning money. A massive 37% of young graduates are already pursuing blue-collar physical jobs. They are actively choosing stability over fragile corporate promises. They prefer the steady pay of a physical trade over the constant anxiety of corporate layoffs. They are choosing automation-resistant roles because you cannot offshore a plumbing emergency. For those who remain in the corporate world, loyalty is completely dead. The old promise of a stable career has been replaced by a new economic reality. The new promise is absolute ownership of your own financial future. Climbing your very own career ladder is much safer because it actually belongs to you. Young workers are patching together multiple part-time gigs and freelance contracts just to survive. They are using artificial intelligence tools to run their own small businesses from their bedrooms. They are refusing to tie their entire identity to a massive corporation that does not care about them. This generation watched their parents lose everything during sudden financial crashes. They learned that depending on a single corporate paycheck is the ultimate financial gamble. So the next time a wealthy executive complains that nobody wants to work anymore, you know the truth. The problem is not a lazy generation addicted to social media. The problem is a global economy that destroyed the entry-level training ground. Corporations consolidated their massive power and refused to train new hires. They posted fake ghost jobs while expecting young workers to arrive with years of invisible experience. Gen Z desperately wants to work. They simply refuse to participate in a deeply broken system that offers absolutely zero reward. The workforce is being completely reshaped by brutal economic pressure. The companies that refuse to adapt to this new reality will simply not survive the decade.